Good morning, students. Welcome to today's the Hindu newspaper analysis of the day by the ARK Reflections IAS. So let's briefly discuss the important articles for our UPSC and other state PSC examinations. So starting from the headlines. So today we have the second phase of the Bengal was going to the elections from in the Bengal was going to happen. And when it comes to the headlines, the Rajnath calls for unity to eliminate terrorism. So our Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, he's in the Bishkek, that is Kyrgyz capital city, so to attend the SCO summit. And next important headlines was up to 9,400 accounts banned, says WhatsApp. So WhatsApp, in its answer to the Supreme Court, it said that almost 9,400 accounts it has banned for connecting to the or alleged links to the these digital arrest fraudsters. Okay, so and the next, so the very important news when it relates to the international affairs, the UAE announced the exit from the OPEC group. It's a major setback. It's a major setback for the OPEC organization. It's also not just announced from the exit from the OPEC, but also from the OPEC plus. So why this OPEC is kind of a cartel of these oil exporting countries where to regularize their export prices. So if they individually they export the oil, what happens? So the prices can't be stable. So the prices has to decrease over the time. So they all these oil producing countries together they form one cartel called group, in the group called OPEC. And in the later in the recently 2016, so the Russia and some other major oil producing countries they form the OPEC plus. So now the influence of the OPEC in the global arena was declining. So and the recent and yesterday the UAE announced its exit from the OPEC. So we'll also see that. And next important highlight was the growth in the industrial output at 5-month low of 4.1% of March. So now the industrial output 5-month low. Main reasons: the consumer demand has decreased. So especially the construction industry was also shows the sharp decline. Only the investment driven economy now the present Indian economy is driven by the investments, not by the consumer demand. So we'll also discuss that one. And article where we can see is okay, 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 okay. Here we can see, yeah. So there is an important article about the right to education and the idea of social inclusion, especially the Supreme Court in the January 2026, the recent like 3 months back. So it emphasized the need of 12 clause C in the right to education. We'll also discuss about that. What is this 12 clause C? How it highlights the inclusion of the marginalized and disadvantaged group of students in the private schools. So why it is needed? Why the Supreme Court strongly emphasized that private schools are not a separate entity, but it's a partner of the primary education. So we'll also discuss that one. And we'll also discuss the Rajnath Singh calls for united SCO approach to eliminate terrorism. So very important news article. So strongly our Rajnath Singh, so he strongly emphasized that the need of the strong anti-terror activities from the SCO. We'll discuss in a brief. So next important articles, yeah, 9,400 accounts banned for the being linked to the digital arrest. So we'll also discuss in brief what are the digital arrest, how our government is taking the measures, how the private companies like the WhatsApp is taking the measures. We'll also discuss that one. And the important article again we'll discuss was crude oil slipped by 2 million tons over January, 15% more costly. Comparing to the January, we imported less fuel, but the price, the import bill was increased. We imported less fuel, but we're paying more, nearly 40% more of the what the January imports were. So that is very not good for our economy. And you can see the rupee fall. So all these indications, like from last few days, we are discussing in our newspaper analysis that, so we can see really not good things are going with the Indian economy. We can see the fall of rupee and also the rise of the import bills. the current account deficit increases, the fall of the exports, supply lines was still it's not opened fully, uncertainty situation in the West Asian war. So these are all things which is impacting India's economy very negatively. As from the first article, we also see the industrial growth has also slipped down. So these are the important articles we'll discuss today. Okay. Yeah. So UAE announces exit from the OPEC group. UAE announces exit from the OPEC. Just a minute. Yeah. Yeah. So what UAE has done? The UAE has announced the exit from the OPEC group. So what is this OPEC? OPEC is simply an organization of these major oil producing companies. So what happens if they are not formed in a group? So individually they supply the oil or they export the oil to the various countries. So they have to decrease the prices to look more attractive. So it will hurt their exports and it is hurting their finances. So in the 1960 they realized this, and major exporting nations, major exporting nations, they came together and they form a group called OPEC. And the OPEC stands for Organization of Oil, Organization of Petrol Exporting Countries. Petrol exporting countries. So these petrol exporting countries, what they do majorly, simply they do was they decide their member countries how much oil they have to produce per day, and they will add its limits. Simple, by the simple definition, the simple objective of OPEC. So if they control the limit, if they control the limit of the production, which means if the control is less, then the demand will be high and the prices will be high. So that's what, to ensure the financial security or the financial security of these oil exporting countries, they form together and simply their cartel, like a syndicate, they formed one group and they're managing the export prices. And these OPEC was increased to, so in the later times, the OPEC was added with the other oil producing countries like the Russia and Brazil, like this, and they formed the OPEC plus. And until recently, these are the two groups which are having a huge, their demand on the oil exports are too high. Okay. So but recently, as we see with the global trends, the other countries which are not belongs to the OPEC and OPEC plus groups, so their participation in the oil exports also rising heavily, so that it is damaging or it is containing the influence of the OPEC plus. So we'll see in the simple explanation. So what happens? The OPEC out of OPEC, so EAE is out of OPEC and OPEC plus. It is from the May 1st it is going to implement. What is the reason? The reason is clearly the UAE wants more independence and control over its oil production. Simply, what is here the main problem is some countries want to produce more oil, and some countries want to reduce the oil production. So obviously, among the members, there are some internal disturbances or happen. So now UAE has a strong disturbances with the Riyadh, like that is Saudi Arabia, that UAE want to produce more oil, but Riyadh wants to reduce its production. So like that, so UAE understood that it can't have a full freedom on its oil production. So it announced it want to come out of the OPEC and OPEC plus from May 1st. May 1st, that is day after tomorrow, it is going to affect. So why? The reason was OPEC has kept limit on production unto its member countries. Organization of Petrol Exporting Countries, it formed in the 1960 to control the oil supply. and to stabilize the oil prices and protect the members' interest. Members' interest means not the global countries' interest; it's the members of OPEC. So to protect the interests of the OPEC members, so this OPEC syndicate has formed. So simple idea, if they reduce the oil supply, what happens? The prices will increase. If they increase the oil supply, the prices will decrease. So more supply is equal to less demand, and more demand is, if the supply is less, the demand will increase. So as a simple philosophy, they are they are following this rule. And what is the goal? The goal is to regulate the oil production to get more profits, and extended to this OPEC plus. So extended to this OPEC, the other countries joined, like Russia in 2016, and they formed a group called OPEC plus. OPEC plus. So until now, they ruled the global oil price. They ruled the global oil prices. Whatever the production limits they have kept, the all followed the same thing, so that almost they decided the oil price. Almost they decided the oil price, but keeping the some certain kind of barriers to its member countries. Okay, but now what happens? It influence on the global oil prices was decreasing. Why? The rise of oil supply from non-OPEC countries. So these people are controlling and supplying, and there are some new emerging players like the US. So they say like only supply this much, but US dump more oil into the global market. What happens? If the supply is more, the prices are going down. That is one problem with the OPEC. So internal disturbances, like the difference of opinions between the different internal countries like the UAE and Saudi Arabia. That is one of the major cause why the UAE is coming out of this OPEC. Some want more prices, some want to sell more. So this is one of the classical difference. For example, UAE want to sell more. Saudi wants to for more prices. So this is one classical difference. And rise of renewables like the electric vehicles and all. So the influence of the OPEC is slowly diminishing. And also the geopolitics, the present West Asian war uncertainty, where the 20% of the global oil supply is in the jeopardy. Okay, that is the one of the reasons. So OPEC's future depend on unity, relevance, and adapting the energy transition. So this is the simple idea of what is OPEC. And next, with reference to the OPEC, consider the following statements. Headquarters is in Vienna. Yes, headquarters of the OPEC is in Vienna. All major oil producing countries are the members of OPEC, as we recently just now we discussed. Like the major countries like US is not the member. Not all the major oil producing countries are members. No. So UAE has decided to exit OPEC. That is true. So 1 and 2. So 1 and 3 is the correct answer. Okay. So we'll see the next article. So simply the growth in the industrial output at 5-month low of 4.11% in March. The slowdown in construction and consumer-centric sectors pulled down index of industrial production growth in the first month of the data. As here we can see that this is March 2026, this is April, right? You can see from the March the 4.1% slip. 4.1% slip. This is due to three main reasons. The three main reasons was decrease in the consumer demand, consumer products demand, and decline in the industrial sector, especially construction sector. The construction related industries has seen the sharp decline. And the third is surely because of the West Asian conflict. West Asian conflict. So these are the three fundamental reasons why why we can see the 4.1% low in the March. So industrial output, the index of industrial output is 4.1% low in the March due to the three reasons: the decrease in the construction demand, and the decrease in the consumer products like demand, and also the West Asian crisis, where the high energy input costs are more. So the products become more costly, and obviously if the products become the more costly, the demand of the products will decrease. And the present Indian economy is driven by investment, not consumption. So Indian economy, the major contributor for the Indian economy is the consumption, consumer consumption. But now not the consumer consumption, it's the investment is driving the Indian economy. So that is what we can understand from this article. Next important, the Google's AI Data Hub project kicks off in Andhra Pradesh. So this is a massive data hub. So it's a massive AI driven data hub which is around 1 gigawatt. 1 gigawatt data hub. So with the investment of 15 billion US dollars, one of the largest investments in India recently. It's a 15 billion US dollar, one of the largest investments in India recently. Where so now at present, India's total data hub capacity, is 1.3 gigawatt. Like the various data centers from. So we also discussed why they are measured in the gigawatts or megawatts or something. So all the present data hubs in India, especially from the Bangalore, Hyderabad, or all together, it was around the collective data hub capacity is 1.3 gigawatt. And now just in the Vizag alone, the Visakhapatnam alone, we have the 1 gigawatt. Just imagine the scale. Almost the 80% of the present India's capacity at one single place. So that is the scale of the Andhra Pradesh, the new Google's AI Data Hub. So we'll discuss briefly about that. So Google Data Hub, the foundation laid in Vizag yesterday. And what is this? $15 billion for Google. And who are the parts? Adani and also Airtel also part of this. And 1 gigawatt data center which means hyperscale, very large capacity, very large capacity. Just imagine the data it can hold and the jobs it can create. It's spanning at 600 crores. AI cloud infrastructure, large scale data storage, digital connectivity via subsea cables. So that is one of the reasons why they selected the Vizag. Okay. So why data centers measured in the gigawatt and megawatts? This is very important. Why data centers are measured in the gigawatts and megawatts? A data center. So now it is a 1 gigawatt. 1 gigawatt, which means a very large scale. So here we can clearly see a data center runs on electricity, servers, cooling, these are all the things. And more power it can draw and more servers it can see. So 1000 megawatts is equal to 1 gigawatt. Here 1 gigawatt means, so which can run huge servers. Huge servers means it can process and store large amount of data. So megawatt and gigawatt tells directly how big and powerful the data center is. So the higher the gigawatt and megawatt means higher the capacity, more AI power and more data simply. So more power, like for example, in future, there is 1 terawatt. 1 terawatt means like these kind of data centers, 1000 data centers which can hold, that is 1 terawatt. Like this. So the 1 gigawatt is one of the gigawatt scale is almost like a energy which used to power a small city. 1 gigawatt is like a energy which used to power a small city. That much big size data center is coming in Vizag. So why Visakhapatnam? Strategic coastal location, ideal for subsea cables. That is one of the reasons why they choose the Visakhapatnam, and emerging as a tech hub. So these are also called the AI Pattanam. So strong push from the AP government. AP government is giving a strong push and boost digital infrastructure. So how it will boost? It boosts our digital infrastructure, India-US tech partnership, data localization, and the cloud expansions, and generates the huge economy for in local and also jobs. In short, Visakhapatnam is strategically located, so which to connect the subsea cables from the various countries. That is one of the reason why they choose the Visakhapatnam, and this 1 gigawatt Google data center is one of its kind and one of it the major data center and the biggest in India. Okay. So next, the RTE Act, the idea of social inclusion. So what happened in January 2026? Supreme Court emphasized the RTE Act, so Right to Education Act, and especially 12 clause C. 12 clause C, which mentions that 25% reservation for underprivileged or economically weakened section and socially weakened section. okay, weekend section students. So they have to the private schools have to provide at least 25% reservation for these marginalized sections students. Okay, so why? So these RTE Act, right of children to free and compulsory education act, it came under 2009, which means it's a constitutional right. It's a constitutional right. So section 12C, 25% reservation in private school for the disadvantaged children. Disadvantaged in the case socially marginalized and also economically also marginalized section children. Okay, January 2026, what Supreme Court judgment has emphasized. So it's a constitutional provision, 12 clause C, which means every private school have to implement this 25% reservation no matter what. Clearly, it promotes social inclusion and equality. It promotes the social inclusion and equality. Private school partners, not outsiders in education. The private schools are a partners. They are not considering as a outsiders. So it means the private school should be more enthusiastically participate in this kind of reform. Okay. So why is it important? So why this 25% reservation in every top major private school and every private school? So what it creates? It creates the mixed classrooms. So better social integration. So these students will integrate better. For example, just imagine a very auto rickshaw puller and they have a kid. And if he got the admission in one of the top private school, just imagine what happens to his life especially in the early education career. So he will get the very good opportunities and he will be trained by the best teachers and he will take the opportunities. He will improve his cognitive ability to match almost any of the people from the high class, like the highly developed people, like here. And more importantly, as you see in the societal perspective, it reduces the prejudice and discrimination. So which means even the children of the Supreme Court judge or the industrialist and also the auto rickshaw puller, they all sit in the same classroom and they listen to the classes and they will have their primary education. And it will definitely improve the confidence and aspiration of the disadvantaged groups. But what are the challenges? Of course, there's many like the private schools, they are implementing these provisions, but still what happens? They are charging these students in the form of a hidden fees, like the uniforms, textbooks, and various other fees, like not the tuition fees. Only tuition fees mostly paid by the government. But recently we also discussed about the Kerala case. In the Kerala case, even these fees of textbooks or extra fees other than the tuition fees also completely paid by the Kerala. So in that article, it emphasized that even all the other state governments should follow the Kerala model, where they have to provide the complete free education, including the uniforms and the books. So hidden costs are the major challenge, and also delays in the reimbursement. The governments don't release this reimbursement very easily. So what will do the management of the schools? They will harass the students parents. So weak monitoring. So how effectively this 25% is implementing is monitoring less. That is one of the major challenge. So this is not a privatization of the education, making the private schools more inclusive. So 25% of the reservation for marginalized, socially marginalized and economically marginalized sections will make the education more inclusive by making the private schools participate in the inclusive society. So very, very important. So next article we'll see. So our Defense Minister Rajnath Singh calls for the unified Shanghai Cooperation Organization's approach to eliminate the terrorism. Okay. So he strongly said that the real test for SCO members lies in maintaining consistency and rejecting double standard, particularly addressing the state-sponsored and cross-border terrorism. Of course, we can see that he clearly indicating the Pakistan while mentioning this. So he calls for more orderly world. He completely rejects the terrorism at any form. So India promotes the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So, and India also rejects the terrorism in any form, in any nature also. And he strongly emphasized that state should not show that double standard. So which means it effectively tells that, like for example, if you take the Pakistan, it always plays a victim card that it is the biggest sufferer of terrorism, but at the same time, it also promotes the terrorism towards India. So that is what the real double standards means. Here, the Rajnath urged SCO members to adopt the unified approach against the terrorism. And the key points, the zero tolerance. So he strongly emphasized that so governments must ensure the zero tolerance towards the terrorism, and they should not justify any terrorism should not be justified. Like for example, the Pakistan should not justify the terrorism in the name of Kashmir rights protection. And terrorism has no ideology and no nationality. So he strongly decried the double standards by the countries, that is one, and also state sponsored and the cross border terrorism. State sponsored and the cross border terrorism. And next important, he emphasized that there are three evils. He emphasized the three evils when it comes to the terrorism. The first one is terrorism, extremism, and the separatism. He strongly emphasized the SCO states, especially they should concentrate on these three evils and try to eliminate these three evils. Okay, he emphasized the roles of regional anti-terrorist structure, the RAT structure of SCO. And India's stance, he completely emphasized that India stands on the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that world is one family. His message was a united and coordinated approach against terrorism is the need of the hour for peace, security, and stability in the region and beyond. So this is what our Defense Minister Rajnath Singh ji, he emphasized in the SCO summit in Bishkek, that is the capital of Kyrgyzstan. Okay. So next article we'll see about the 9,400 accounts banned for being linked to digital arrest. 9,400 accounts. Yeah. So before the Supreme Court, the WhatsApp has submitted some documents where it banned the 9,400 accounts which are directly linked to the digital arrest. Digital arrest. So what is a digital arrest means? The fraudsters, these fraudsters, what they impersonate them as a police or customs officials, police or customs official, and they do the video call with the victims and strongly with the victims, and they alleged and they strongly bring the allegation, the fake allegations or the fake legal proceedings against the victim that you are indirectly or directly involved in this kind of a fraud. So we are arresting you digitally. So on the basis of to relieve this digital arrest, they will ask them to transfer the money to their account. So this is how the digital arrests are going to happen. And to control this digital arrest, so the government is effectively coordinating with private organizations and also Indian Government Coordinating Center, IC4. IC4. So these IC4, so what happens? It strongly coordinating with all these digital platforms and to bring these digital arrests come down. And also especially the WhatsApp, what it has done now, it want to make it account which is linked with the SIM. So for example, the UPI. The classic example is UPI. Without SIM, our UPI won't work. So similarly, if we link the WhatsApp account to the UPI, so the tightening of the grip of the security will so much increase. So we can bring down the number of accounts which are they are using for the digital arrest. So that is what it is, the main content from this story. Okay. So next important article, the crude oil imports slipped by 2 million tons over January, 50% more costly. So what happened here, clearly understood. Comparing to January, we bought less fuel. But the import bill shoot up that almost 40%. 40% it has increased. We bought the less oil, but we paid 40% high. So this is how the present situation of the India's oil imports. So which means it strongly emphasizes that India should work towards the strong independency from the strong path towards the independency of the energy. Okay, which we will discuss here. The crude oil imports fell by 2 million tons in March, but import bill shot up sharply. So here we can clearly see 19 million tons in March, which is almost like 2 million tons less than the January. Okay, and what is the cost? For 9 million tons, it is 1.2 lakh crores. 1.2 lakh crores. But we almost decreased the 2 million tons less. But we paid in the January for adding these like 21 million tons, we paid only 86,000 crores. 86,000 86,000 crores and 40% increase in the import bill. As we can see, we imported less oil, but we are paying more money. So which means a 40% increase in the import bill. Oil became for 50% more expensive. As a result, India stopped the LNG imports mostly, and it increased the production of the LNG from the local, like the Krishna Godavari basin or Assam. So various places, so India has a local production of like LPG and other natural gases. So it increased the local production. So why is this happened? Because of the main reason of the West Asia conflict and price effect. Here, why it happened? These kind of scenario, why even we imported less, but why we have to pay more? Because of the price effect is much greater than the quantity effect. Price, though less oil, prices rose, even the less quantity, which increases our current account deficit, means which we have to pay more money in the dollars. Of course, the world markets where we are importing the countries, they won't accept the rupees. So we have to pay them in the US dollars. So the current account deficit, which is shooting up. As we can also see that our economic growth is impeding because of the West Asian crisis. Our exports are hampered. Global trade supply lines are also not in a proper way, and as a result, it is pushing the cost push inflations. As the price of the resource materials or the fundamental materials increases, what happens? So the prices of the goods become more expensive. Even the, for example, you take the plastic chairs. The plastic, one of the raw material is the petroleum based products or the petroleum based jellies. So these, for the plastic, these are very important. Even the polyester shirts, the fundamental fibers is also manufactured by the plastic. So when these fundamental materials are increased, what happens? The company is unable to generate the profits. If the company is unable to generate the profits, what will happen? They can't shift those profits to the workers, and the workers will get the same salary, and also, but the prices in the society or in the world is getting increased. So inflation risks are very high, especially the cost push inflation. The energy security concerns. So the dependency, this is the one of the classic example how much India is dependent on its energy because on other countries. So immediately India has to take a strong steps towards the energy independence. Of course, it is taking some steps, but it has to so fast the process by giving more concessions to the EV vehicles and improving the green hydrogen, biofuels like this. And the key takeaway from this is, even though we imported the less crude, higher global prices increases our import bill, impacting the economy, inflation, and energy security. So these are the total number of the articles of today's Hindu newspaper, and we'll discuss tomorrow's newspaper, okay, on tomorrow. So thank you for being with us, and please be subscribed and stay with the channel for the further notifications. Thank you.